morning. Nearly dropped a stitch there. Certainly going a lot faster since I switched from those horrible plastic needles. Hello, whoever just joined. Okay, a blue marker means end of the row. Okay, I'll move my little pattern marker there. All right, so basically I'm starting from the waist, I'm going up to the armholes, and so I've just measured on some existing vests that he has how deep it needs to be. So my husband's got kind of a long torso, so it looks like I'm aiming for about 15 before I start the armholes. So I'm only just at like just over 10 right now. So I got a while yet to go before I can actually split for the armholes. Whoops. So I measured on an existing garment how deep it was to the armholes, how deep it was to the start of the V-neck, and then how deep the armholes themselves are. That's a bit tricky because the other vests I've knitted him are in a 4-ply, which is a much finer wool, you know, and this is obviously 10-ply. It's much thicker. So it's not going to fit the exact same under a jacket as the thinner ones do, but I think it'll still go under a jacket without sleeves. I offered to make it into a proper jumper, but he actually prefers being able to wear it under a jacket, which blocks the wind a bit better than a sweater anyway. All right, so the even numbered rows don't have any cable crosses, so I'm just going to knit the knits and purl the purls essentially here. stitch caught it. Just fix it there. Yeah, the stitches slide a lot better on this needle. I should have done that. Should have done it way earlier. Kind of got the hang of this pattern now. Don't have to count every row the way I did at the start and muck it up. So if you haven't watched the previous streams, this pattern is called Dr. G's Memory Vest. It's on Ravelry. I found it on there. I was looking for a men's cabled vest that was the appropriate thickness for this wool that I had already, and found this pattern. It was designed for someone. Dr. G apparently was a man who had Alzheimer's, and so this family member of theirs, whose name was Kirsten Kapoor, designed this vest, and if you donate to Alzheimer's research, you can get the pattern. And it's a nice little pattern. I mean, it's very cute, and it could be for men or women. It's just a vest, really. Yellow marker there is marking the other seam line. So basically the two stitch markers are marking the underarms. And the yarn, the wool that I'm using, if you'd like to see, this is, I actually brought this from Australia. This is Joe Sharp Silk Road DK Tweed. I mean, it says DK. It's 8 to 10 ply. It's fairly thick. You can tell the recommended needle size is a 5 mil. So you're sort of getting into a light worsted or a worsted territory there. But it's 85% wool, 10% silk, 5% cashmere, and it is so squishy and so soft. It's actually a real delight to knit with. I'm a fan of Joe Sharp, especially the Silk Road. I've done a few garments out of it. I don't think it's as well known outside of Australia, perhaps. I actually don't know if they're even still going in Australia, but I bought that at a Knitters Guild D-Stash event a few years back. I've got about a packet of it, about 10 balls. And I think so far I've only used, 2 or 3 on this vest, so I'm going to have plenty. I will most likely have plenty left over. Hi, Masks Bandit. How are you? I'm well, thank you. It is Saturday morning in Munich. Oh, new follower, Lucy! Hey, Lucy! Oh, I haven't seen you in forever. Ooh, Lucy's sewing. Are you still using my old sewing machine, Lucy? When I moved to Germany, I upgraded the sewing machine and I pass my old faithful on to Lucy, so I hope it's been treating you very well. She was a good machine for like 20 years for me. Been thinking about getting into sewing. We are getting properly into spring summer here. Oh, nice. I'm glad you are. Yeah, and I've been thinking about sewing. I brought plenty of fabric with me too. Not all of it, but all the sort of nice big garment pieces. Been thinking of making some trousers. You've been making trousers. 3:40 a.m. Mask Bandit. Wow. Yeah, I had insomnia this week as well. I had one night where I didn't get to sleep till probably after 3 as well. And it's made me feel jet lagged all week, to tell you the truth. I think I'm finally starting to catch up. So yeah, trousers, Lucy. Looking at trousers. There's a really cute knitting shop in my neighborhood, or sewing shop, but of course everything's been closed for lockdown. But things are finally starting to open back up here, and so I'm thinking about. They have a pattern for some trousers I saw on their I clicked on one of their Instagram ads, so now I see it constantly. So if it's all in German. I tell myself it's good. I'll learn some German. So I only know like stricken is knitting, and Nahen, Nahen, is sewing, or Schnittmuster is a pattern. So Schnitt is to cut. Schnittmuster is your pattern. I've learned a few of the words. I end up having to hit the translate this post quite a lot. So one thing I'm doing, for those of you who know knitting, between each of the motifs on this vest, there is a twisted stitch. So each of these columns, the knit stitch here is actually twisted. I'm knitting it through the back. And so it makes it stand out a little more. Yes, the sewing patterns are in German. They all speak German. So here's that twisted stitch. So instead of knitting through normally a knit stitch, I'm actually going to knit through the back of the stitch instead, which twists it, and it just makes it stand out a little bit more. Yeah, I'm actually starting a German class next week. So we've been in Germany for 8 months now. God, it's flown. And had hoped to pick up, a lot more German incidentally, but with lockdown, we don't actually talk to that many German people, like other than the supermarket. And I have a couple colleagues who, a lot of people here speak English too. That's the end of the row. So, actually, truly, even in Bavaria, I think you could, well, in Munich anyway, get by without having German. But I want to get better, and I saw an email that there were some people at work who are starting a Berlitz course, and so I've found out that work reimburses for it. So I managed to get in and start next Friday. So I'll be speaking a lot more Deutsch, 3 hours a week. I doubt they're going to cover sewing terminology though. All right, so this is a cabling row. So every 4th row has a lot of cables in it. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And I don't use a cable needle for my cables. I do cabling without a cable needle. So I'll show you the first one here. So I'm up to these 2 rope cables. So each cable is 4 stitches, and it's 2 and 2 that are just crossed every 4 rows. So I need to do a cross here. Now, what the pattern would say is slide 2 stitches onto cable needle, hold it back, knit next 2 stitches, knit 2 stitches off. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to use my needle to grab the 2 stitches that need to cross. Just need to get in there. I'm going to grab them from the front. So I've slid my needle into there. I'm going to slide all 4 stitches off, and then I'm going to rearrange them. Because this is all a cable is. It is rearranging the stitches before you knit them. And you can see I've crossed them over. You got to make sure you're doing the cross the right way. And so now I knit them. And then there's a purl stitch in between the two ropes. And you can see I've just done that cable cross. So now the other cable twists the other direction. So I don't want to do the exact same thing again. This time I'm going to grab the 2 stitches from the back. I've got them from the back. Again, I'm going to use my thumb to kind of hold it and slide all 4 of them off. And then I'm just going to rearrange them on the needle. And now when I knit them, and then the purl, usually cables are set off by reverse stocking stitch. There you go. I've done 2 cable crosses. I can show you the way the cable would do it. Let me grab a cable needle. You know, I'll just use a crochet hook for the moment. We'll pretend that's a cable needle is just another straight needle like that. So we'll just pretend that this crochet hook is a cable needle. So let me get up to another one so I can show it to you the proper way. Now I'm at this sort of laddery bit, and so for the ladder bit I just purl across. So the first few cabled garments that I did, I followed the instructions exactly, and you know, it's not hard to do cables really. But you know, the cable needle falls down in the couch cushions or the cat knocks it on the floor. And someone told me that you can cable without a cable needle, and I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And so I Googled it, cable without cable needle, and found someone who had a blog post that explained it, and it makes a ton of sense. All right, so if I followed the instructions for this particular cable, what it would say is slide the next 2 stitches to your cable needle. So I'll just slide them onto the needle. So it would tell me that. It would tell me to hold at the back of the work. Now the front of the work is the side facing you and the back is away from you. So I would just put it behind and just leave it there, ignore it. It would tell me to knit the next 2 stitches. So I'd knit these 2. And then it would tell me to knit the 2 stitches off the cable needle. So then I go back and I actually knit the 2 that are on the cable needle. I am accomplishing exactly the same thing that I did by rearranging them. So there you go. You can see we've done the twist. All I'm doing is it's just reordering the stitches. So that's why the trick with doing the cabling without cable needle is to visualize what it's telling you to do. There's the purl. So this next one would tell me hold 2 stitches at the front. So I'd hold these 2 at the front. It would tell me to knit the next 2. So I would knit stitches 3 and 4. And then I would go back and knit 1 and 2. So just doing them out of order. So if I think of it that way, and if I look at the cable, if you look at it and imagine it in 3 dimensions, this is a rope. I know that the bit on the right needs to cross over the bit on the left. So that means these 2 stitches need to come on top of 3 and 4. So I'm going to grab 3 and 4 from the back, which remember the pattern will tell me to hold 1 and 2 at the front. So that's kind of what I'm doing. 1 and 2 are in the front. 3 and 4 are going to be knitted first. So now when I slide them all off and rearrange them, it's exactly the same. I'm just doing it without that extra intermediate step of a cable needle. So for any sort of small cable, like probably even up to 6 stitches, I would do it this way. If it was a much bigger cable, I would probably still use the cable needle just because I would worry that I would drop them when I slide them off. With 4 or 6, I can hold them with my thumb pretty well, but anything bigger than that, I would get a bit worried. But the more you do them, you'll kind of work out what you need to do. Like if it says hold 2 at the front, I grab 3 and 4 from the back because that makes 1 and 2 in the front. You just got to kind of, it's a little mental flip. All right, so now I'm at the tree motif in the center, calling this the tree here. And so you see it's got a central trunk, which is slip stitches, and then it's got these branches that angle in. And so you're afraid you wouldn't be able to pick up the stitches again. Yeah, look, you get good if you drop. The only way you get good at picking up stitches is to actually drop them. So the tree branches need to angle in, and so each decrease row, there's a tiny 1-stitch cable, basically. So, so basically this branch here, I'll call it, this column of knit stitches, needs to move one stitch to the left. And so it's going to come over the top of this purl. So the pattern would tell me to hold the knit stitch at the front. I'll do what the pattern would say. The pattern would say, slip the knit stitch to cable needle, hold it front, purl the purl, and then knit the knit. We don't need to mess with this. We don't need this. Instead, I'm going to grab the purl. I'm going to rearrange them so that the knit is coming on top of the purl. And then I just go ahead and knit and purl them. So we've just reordered them. So my knit stitch has shifted one stitch to the left. And as you might guess, I'm going to do the opposite on the other side. So that central trunk I mentioned is slipped. So to do that, I'm going to put the wool to the back. I'm just going to slip it without working it. And then I'm going to put the wool back. So that central stitch is not knitted every other row. And that's what makes it, you can tell, it kind of stands out a bit. It's bigger. It's a row bigger than the other stitches. Just a nice decorative effect. Okay, so there's that branch again. So that row of knitted stitches. And this time I need it to move one stitch to the right over the top of this purl. Grab it through the front, slide them off. You'd be surprised if you're using a sticky enough wool, they don't wanna drop. Like if I were using a very slippery wool, that would be another reason where I would use a cable needle. Or maybe if I were doing a cabled sock where it was quite fine, especially now that I'm getting old and my eyesight is crap, I would probably be tempted to use a cable needle for that as well, just because if you drop it, it's such a pain in the butt to pick it up again. All right, another rope. This is exactly the same way as I did it before. I'm just gonna grab these stitches through the front and slide them off. And see, look, they're not really going anywhere. Like, they don't want to go too far. So Lucy, if you're still there, what are you sewing? I'm disturbing you if you're cutting out fabric, actually. A jacket. Oh, wow. Like proper tailoring kind of a jacket? I saw, was it Georgie? I saw Georgie put one on Instagram. Is it the one, George? Oh, it's a sweater. I see. Okay. Oh, okay, not tailored at all. All right, cool. Yeah, I saw Georgie had a blazer on her Instagram the other day that she made, and it got me thinking about jackets and tailoring. Hopefully quick and easy. Nice. So it's all right. Yeah. And you're just doing it on the normal sewing machine with knits, or did you get a overlocker yet? Yet. Yeah. Come on, get in there. There we go. You got an overlocker. That's right. Nice. Nothing makes you feel more like a professional sewer than an overlocker. Any pattern can do either. Oh, nice. Knit, woven as well. Actually, even better than a home overlocker. I did a course once at a place in East Sydney. It's long gone now. I think it was called the Sewing Room. I did the sewing class, and they had professional overlockers, like these big ones for like people who sew a lot, like for tailors, and they're like built into the desk. Those were amazing. It was like, you know, slam on the gas and it would just. But my little Janome from Aldi works just fine too. I miss it. It's back in storage. This year is all about knits. Yeah, knits are a lot more forgiving. But they also, I mean, I get very anxious about cutting them and making sure that they're like on grain more so than I do with woven. Because a lot of knits also, we buy them at the I guess a thicker knit, not so much, but the jersey weight, you know, they're not cut square and they get stretched out. And it's like, oh, I get very stressed out about trying to make sure I'm done a couple t-shirts and it's actually stressful. All right, halfway through the round O cables. Yes, an overlocker is a serger, mass bandit. That's what we call them in Australia. I was in a meeting yesterday and they were like, introduce yourself. And one of the questions was like, if money was no object, what would you buy? And I was like, okay, you know, let's, you know, in addition to like solving world peace and all of that, it would be you know, houses in Australia and the US, and a really nice set of top of the line sewing machines. I would have the cover stitch machine. I would have probably get a baby lock, you know, like I would just go thousands of dollars on sewing machines. You struggle to cut them straight. Yeah, that's my problem with knits and where I get frustrated. I discovered my new Janome has an overlock stitch, and a special foot with it too that because you know they come with like a ton of feet and I rarely use them, but I actually looked in the manual and I got out the special foot because I did for the sock monkeys I made a month or two ago. I did some knit sewing for them, and it actually works great. You know, not 100% as good as an overlocker, but pretty darn close. Just doing some more cabling. Every other row of this pattern has a lot of cables. And for any newbies, just one thing to notice is when I switch between knits and purls, so here I'm doing a bunch of purls, but when I switch between knits and purls, the trick you have to remember is to move the wool between the needles. Because if I need to do a knit now, if I do my knit without moving the wool back, I actually create an extra stitch. I create a hole, and that's a yarn over. And you sometimes intentionally want to do that if you're knitting lace, but I do not want to do that for this. So instead, whenever I switch from knitting to purling, I have to move the wool between the needles. So for purling, it's always in the front, and for knitting, it's always in the back. So if you've knitted ribbing or you've tried to do a pattern that we switch from knits to purls, and you find that you keep gaining stitches or you get holes in it, that'll be why. And it's non-obvious. You know, patterns don't tell you. It will just say 3 knits, 2 purls, and not tell you that you need to move the yarn between. So it's hard as you're a beginner to figure that out, that that's what you need to do. Yeah, the cutter. I think that the old Janome had like a, you know, I used it for a couple knits. And yeah, it has some sort of overlock stitch on the edge, but cutting it off makes it super nice. The only problem with the little Aldi, hey Woban, the only problem with the little Aldi overlocker I bought is it doesn't have like a bin for the cut off bits. They just sort of fall in your lap, which can be a little bit annoying. So I think that would be, I'm sure the fancy ones have an actual collection bin. What are you up to these days, Woban? Spinning, I think I've seen on Instagram, more spinning happening. There's the slip stitch. Spinning and working on a sock. Yeah, I've got my sock sitting here as well. Just kind of getting up to the bit where I need to start working on the heel. And I figure that's probably going to involve some maths that don't make for as good streaming. Based on the previous streams where I've had to sit and do maths in front of everyone. Let's avoid that. Every now and then I get a little bit of vegetable matter in this wool. More cabling. I'll show you what it looks like if I cable the wrong direction. So let's say I'm not paying attention and I rearrange my stitches the wrong way. And this has happened to me a number of times. And so if I knit those and then I purl, and let's say I have a look, you can see what's happened. Instead of crossing under, this one's curved back on itself like a snake. And again, there are cable patterns where you will do that deliberately, but this one is meant to be a continuous twist. So it's always a good idea every now and then to stop and look at your cables and try and spot a miscrossed cable, because it will drive you. It will drive you a little bit crazy afterwards. So instead I'm going to fix it. So I'm just going to undo those 4 stitches by tinking them, by unknitting them. And then I will very carefully slide them off and rearrange them again. There we go. And now I will cross them correctly. Skew. I feel like I've heard of skew. There must be some twist to it, or let me look it up on Ravelry. Ravelry skew sock. Oh, interesting. You knit it diagonally? That is, wow. That's kind of cool. Nice. I bet that is a little bit of a, and you Kitchener the heel a bit. Knit on the bias. You can cable, I mean, there's a reason most cabling is done in the round, because, you know, I don't have effectively purl rows. Instead, what I have is I have a row with cables and then a row of no cables. But yeah, you can cable and purl just as easily as you do in knits. It's the exact same process. You just follow the pattern and hold it to the front or back, depending on what it says. I mean, these are fairly, look, this is, oops, I split that a little bit. These are fairly simple cables. Sometimes, like I've done a jumper, like an Aran jumper with lots of cables, where you kind of are doing increasing and decreasing at the same time, because you want cables to sort of grow out of nothing or to come to a point into nothing. And, you know, that can be a little bit trickier. There's a step in the sock called the origami moment. This sounds less like a sock and more like, you know, a yoga practice. But yeah, I mean, I will actually have to go back and forth on this garment, because when I get up to the armholes, I have to split and knit the front and the back separately. So you're absolutely right, Lucy. I will, well, except I won't, because the cable crosses all happen on the knit side. So the purl side, and that's a good designer will sort of design it that way. It's easier that way. But I will have to knit back and forth when I split for the armholes. The Designer of the sock has 2 master's degrees. Yeah, I mean, I brought with me Cookie A's sock innovation, but I have hated every sock I've knitted from it. Like, they're cool and they're theoretical and they look nice, but man, are they a pain to knit. Conceptual socks, really. There was one I remember seeing, I never knitted it. I think it was on Knitty, called Sidewinder back in the day, where you knitted it like horizontally, I think. Probably more fun to knit than it is comfortable to wear. Okay, finish the cable row. Back to the blue. So yeah, every 4 rows is the row where I have to do all that cable crossing. It's the row with all the rope twists. It's the row with the ladder. And so there's another row finished. Mark that on my pattern. Do I wear them all? Pretty much. Well, look, no. You're right. No, I don't. Some of the stuff I needed earlier in my career, I don't wear because, it doesn't fit as well, or I cheaped out and bought cheap wool that isn't as nice to wear. Nowadays, when I knit things, thanks, Mash Bandit. Nowadays, when I knit things, I tend to only knit things that I know that I will wear, because I buy nice wool and I put the time into them. When I was earlier, I would just crank shit out. So I do. I have like a bag of knitted stuff back in Sydney in storage. I didn't even bother to bring because, I brought a cabled sweater, but it's a bit too short in the torso. I knitted myself, this really lovely wool cotton top. It's the Rusted Root, if anybody knows that. It's like a t-shirt. With a lace panel up the front, and made a big ass mistake in the middle of the lace and didn't catch it for literally months after I was wearing it. So I don't wear that because I can't bother looking at it. But all the stuff I brought with me to Germany, that was stuff that I actually wanted to wear, and I do wear it all. And everything in the little slideshow is stuff that I wear. Not right now. It's getting warm here. It was, 23 degrees last week. But, early in if you go to my earliest stuff on Ravelry, there is stuff in there that I don't wear anymore. The Cheesy Love vest, that was one. My friend Amy and I knitted this vest off of Knitty, which was a ribbed vest with sort of pink hearts across the chest. It had a ruffle at the bottom. I remember the pattern started with cast on 700 stitches or something, which is just insane. And then you decrease to make the ruffle. But that one, Cheesy Love, was one that Amy and I both knitted, and then we entered into the Ravelry calendar competition. We had a photo made of the two of us knitting on the steps of the Opera House in Sydney wearing it. And we won. We were on the cover of the calendar for Knitty that year. That was probably the early 2000s, pretty early in the mid-2000s. So I don't wear that anymore. I knitted a vest, my one blue ribbon at the Sydney Royal Easter Show, which was only probably 5 or 6 years ago, was a vest for me. It's a pattern called Catriona, I think, like an Irish Celtic kind of cable vest all over. And it was lovely. The problem is the wool I knitted it from was incredibly soft and very loosely spun, almost like a single, and it has felted. You look at the damn thing and it pretty much felts. So I actually don't wear it because every time I put it on, it's under the arms, and wherever it touches anything, it just pills and felts, which is depressing when you put a lot of work into something and it doesn't wear well. A lot of things. You can always get some pilling with knits, but that one was just particularly bad because it's so loosely spun. Supposed to get up to 15°C today. Today, I mean, it's supposed to be rainy all day in Munich. It's been raining all week, but actually today, right now, it's not raining. So that's why I thought I would only knit till about noon. And then I'm actually going to try and get out into the fresh air this afternoon. So I'm on the off row, the non-cable row, so no cable crosses this row. Just pretty much knitting the knits and purling the pearls. Been doing loads of biking. Did you bike much in Sydney? Because I had a bike in Sydney. I sold it before we left. I bought a bike many years ago when I was working down in the Rocks. I realized, because the buses in Sydney, there's only like one bus at the time that went right down properly into the Rocks. Or no, there was two, the 431 or 433, I think. But it was kind of a pain, and I realized that actually biking, Rod was working at Yahoo 7, which was also down on Hickson Road, and realized we could commute via bike. Sydney's not the most, Sydney is hostile to cyclists, quite frankly. It doesn't have separated cycleways through most of the city. Drivers are really aggressive. There's traffic. And there's hills. Sydney's quite hilly, too. So, but we worked out that actually that was probably the best commute I could have had, because we could go through Darling Harbour, which is pedestrian only and cycles. So it could pretty easily get over to Darling Harbour from our place, ride around Darling Harbour to Hickson Road. And then you were riding alongside cars, but not for long, and it's not a lot of traffic there, and it's pretty flat. So for probably a good year, better part of a year, Rod and I would commute together on bicycles when we both worked in the Rocks. Then I actually did ride my bike to Canva when I worked at Canva in Surrey Hills. I worked out, and it was only like a 10, like if it were a flat, it would be a 5 to 10 minute ride, I swear to God. But because it was Surrey Hills, it was like all uphill on the way there and then pretty much all downhill on the way back. And so I would get to work and be very sweaty and red-faced. They'd be like, how far did you ride? I'd be like, like a kilometer. But it was all uphill. And then so I didn't and I never commuted to AWS because getting into the CBD, would have just been scary. Our bikes, we didn't use them as much as we thought we would. Rod could have commuted to Google's offices down in Darling Harbour, but he found he didn't like being sweaty when he got there. He doesn't like cycling as much as I do. I enjoy it more than he does. He finds it very nerve-wracking. Well, he also doesn't drive, so I think he finds that stressful. When I'm on a bike, I just think I act like I'm in a car. But yeah, so he doesn't care for riding as much as I do. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of cycling here. I did a 30K ride last weekend. I bought special. So, I did my first 30K ride. My bum was quite sore afterwards from the saddle. And so I'm like, I've heard that you can get padded bike shorts, right? So I went on Amazon. I start looking at like padded ladies bike shorts. They're really expensive. They're like, and obviously they're aiming for like high-end cyclists. So they're like 70 euros or something like that. I'm like, no way am I spending that. And then I see, there's padded cycling underpants, which are much cheaper. And you wear them under your existing bike shorts. So that's what I wear, like bike shorts or leggings. And so I'm like, all right, I'll get a pair of these. So I ordered a pair. And look, they do what they're supposed to do. But I feel like I'm wearing a diaper. It just feels a little unnatural. And so, yeah, so I did wear them on the ride last weekend, and I was like, don't stare directly at the pants. The pants are, awkward. But hey, they worked. But yes, special cycling underpants. That's what I've graduated to. I'm actually going to have a go this afternoon at doing some GPS art, where you actually make a picture or write something in your tracking. I've got an idea in my head for something for work. So I'm actually I need to pull up, when I'm done here, pull up Google Maps and draw out a route that when I track will, like Etch-a-Sketch style, spell something out. Speaking of underpants, Lucy, I don't know if you subscribe, but the Seamwork, which is the magazine sewing patterns from Colette, I'm on their email list, Seamwork. They sent out, I noticed in the newsletter they sent out just the other day, they've got a new free pattern, which is actually, well, it's for underpants, which I've never in my life wanted to sew underpants, but it's actually to sew period underpants. Because, that's a thing, and you can buy them now, and they're quite expensive. And they've actually introduced a pattern to sew your own, which I admit to being intrigued by. I kind of assumed there was some fancy, technology involved in them, but evidently you can just make normal ones. So, you saw it on Instagram. Yeah, it's You're going full. Are you doing me made May? Look, I appreciate the sentiment behind it. I just think that is the dumbest sounding hashtag I've heard in a long time. But I like that people are using it and they're sharing stuff that they've made. It's very nice. It just, to me, feels a little bit silly. Yeah, not with photos, exactly. Like I'm not sharing a blog post about this. I might mention the cycling underpants, but I'm not going to show the cycling underpants. You've been wearing at least one thing you've made each day. That's amazing. Made was right there. Yes, exactly, woman. That would have been perfect. Actually, the photo last week of Rod when he came to join me in the park, the Hawaiian shirt he's wearing was one I made, which was based off the Colette Negroni pattern. I've made him several Hawaiian shirts based off that. And actually, he was wearing shorts, which I made for him, which were cut off an old pair of his pants, his trousers, that the cuffs were terribly frayed, and I actually cut them off and made them into like a pair of khaki shorts. Hemmed them and did a little bit of decorative stitching around the edge. Yeah, me made just sounds me made. I don't care for it. You know what else I've been thinking about? It's ridiculous. I've been reading far too much Sherlock Holmes fan fiction lately. I've gone down a John Locke rabbit hole. And it reminded me that freesewing.org has a pattern for the coat. A big woolen trench. And they've got versions both for breasts and non-breasts, depending. I think it's called the female's the Carlita. Was the man's the Carlos or something it's called? Because the actual one, I looked up the one from the show Sherlock. What is it? It's the... can't remember the name of the brand. It's a Bell... It slipped my mind now. But the actual coat he wears in the show is like 1,300 pounds or euros. It's from an old, of course, British maker, Tweed. Uh, but yeah, there's a pattern on free sewing to make your own. And I read a blog post, someone has actually done it. But the problem is, well, it's not a problem, but free sewing, you know, it's an open source project. It generates made to measure patterns. It's a really cool sort of software system, but it doesn't have a lot of like any software project doesn't have a lot of documentation. So the person who made it was like, look, it does, Bellstaff, that's the one, Bellstaff. Yeah, the Bellstaff. The Bellstaff features in a lot of stories. Yeah, and so the free sewing pattern doesn't have a lot of instructions. And so the person who made it mentioned, you know, proper tailoring of a coat like that involves interfacing and you're underlining things and tailoring. And they mentioned they, you know, looked out for Gertie's got some tutorials on how to do some stuff that they used. And I'm not sure I'm expert enough to tackle it without hand holding. Yeah, the Bellstaff. And I'm sure to get nice wool to make it. Like, I don't think 1,300 pounds is too much for that coat by any means. That is probably what it's worth, you know, given the amount, like the cost of a nice wool tweed, the cost of underlining, the cost of interfacing, the cost of the hand sewing and tailoring that goes into it. I'm sure it's actually worth that amount of money. Okay, there's another row done. Just like all nice self-made clothing, the materials cost more than retail. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, and I know that most retail clothing is honestly, it's not made sustainably. It's made by workers that are earning, you know, barely a living wage, and it affects people's perception of how much clothing should cost. Like, you know, Lucy's doing knits. I've done knits. The cost to sew a t-shirt, like that actually would, you know. If you're doing a decent job at it, let's say I could churn out a t-shirt in an hour. An hour would be fast, you know? Let's say an hour plus materials. Like, you can buy t-shirts for $5. You know, someone is not getting paid a decent rate to make that. And in reality, it would take me way more than an hour. And granted, the stuff you make at home is probably nicer in that you do spend, like we were just talking about, getting the grain right on knits. How many times do you buy a $5 knit t-shirt and it skews because they haven't bothered, they haven't taken the time to actually make sure it's cut on the grain? Yeah, way more than an hour. I don't think I make much sewing-wise. I think everything I make sewing-wise takes me at least one day. I get people, you know, there's a lot of sewing bloggers who are like, oh, cut this out and finished it in 2 hours. And I'm like, what? But yeah, just thinking about sewing the Bellstaff makes me just want to actually just suck it up and buy one. All right, so this is an odd number row, which is a cable row, but it's not It's not every fourth row. This is the second one. So I do the tree cables, but I don't do the rope. It worked in my head. I know what I'm doing in my head. So I've got to take the branch cable over one more. So again, this is that tiny little 2-stitch cable. Just gotta cable the branch. Makes no sense. Slip the trunk. There's the twisted stitch. I threw those old Denise needles in the bin for anybody who watched the previous streams featuring this vest. So I started knitting this vest using my old Denise interchangeables, which I bought a long time ago. They're interchangeable circular needles, but they're plastic, and the joins have gotten very weak. The plastic has worn down, and so in the course of knitting this, the body of this, 3-4 times that the join broke to the point where I sticky taped it together, and eventually I was just like, you know what, they've reached the end of their useful life. They're in the bin, and I switched over to a fixed cable, to the Addy Turbos, which aren't quite as pointy, which makes it slightly more of a pain on the cables, because I like the pointy tip means I can really dig into the front of those cables, but the slipperiness of them is worth it for moving the stitches around. You can just tell how much faster I go using these. I've already done way more rounds this stream than I did in any of the previous streams. And when I pull them around, I don't have to worry that it's gonna bust. I don't want to crap on the knees. They were good. They were just mine were old. And I think interchangeable circular technologies come a long way since they were designed. Twisted stitch. I also got rid of all the stitch markers that I had dividing different motifs, as they're pretty established now, and I've finally the pattern has managed to stick in my brain, so I don't need like the 10 stitch markers around each side marking out the motifs. I can see it pretty clearly where I need to do the twisted stitches. Really only do that for the first few rows where you're getting the cables established. Need to do the tree branch cable here. much cable. Slip the trunk. I just realized what this yarn reminds me of. Peanut butter cookies. It reminds me of peanut butter cookies. I'm quite dehydrated this morning, and I know why. It's because if you follow my well, no, I didn't put it on Instagram because I didn't want to gross you all out, but we ordered McDonald's last night for the first time, and God, it's been probably a year and a half to 2 years since I had McDonald's. Not something we eat regularly anyway, but right now in Germany is Spargelzeit. It's asparagus season, Spargel, and Germans go nuts for asparagus, and it's in all the shops, and so every time we go to the supermarket now, we're trying to get asparagus, and we've been exploring different. I mean, they eat it quite plain, really, just with like ham and potatoes and hollandaise sauce, but we've been getting a bit fun and trying it in different ways. And I saw on Twitter recently that McDonald's right now in Germany have a big Spargel hollandaise burger, which is a hamburger with asparagus. And Spargelzeit here, most of the asparagus is white asparagus, which is not something I'd had before. It's sort of big, fat, white asparagus. It tastes like the green, like it's maybe a little more subtle, but it's very similar tasting. But this burger is beef, salad, hollandaise sauce, cheese, bacon, and these white asparagus tips, Spargelspitze. And so I was like, we have to try it, like for science. We have to try the big Spargel hollandaise. And so ordered McDonald's delivery last night. We each got one, and we shared a large fries, but I forgot how salty Macca's is. Like, woke up, it was okay, you know, like it was. Never had asparagus on a hamburger before. I don't know, is it just an interesting hamburger, not one that I would necessarily go out of my way to order again. I'd rather get some fresh asparagus, and would have been, you know, also it was McDonald's delivered by a guy on a bike, so it wasn't like fresh and piping by the time it came here. I don't know that I had the big Spargel holidays in the optimal conditions, but that's all right. Just made me very thirsty. Hang on. Yeah, that's right. I did it right. Had a momentary fear I messed up the pattern. You did end up making the pumpkin pie from scratch. I remember seeing your tweet that you were looking for pumpkin pie mix, so couldn't find it. No, there are no graham crackers. What I usually do for pumpkin pie in Australia is there's, I think, granita, which is one of the Arnott's biscuits. Just kind of like a digestive biscuit. Rod and I put much thought into over the years, which Australian cookies were going to be close enough. So I tend to use, I believe, the Arnott's granita, which is like a digestive, but without it's a little bit more sort of, I don't know, rustic, I guess. Had a bit golden syrup, you know, in it for, because graham crackers are, you know, honey sort of flavored. Something like a digestive, yeah. All right. So this is even numbered row. And the pumpkin. So what kind of pumpkin did you end up using? Rod always gives me crap for trying to get the canned stuff, but I'm like, Libby's has genetically engineered, and it's true, you can look it up. They have, they're special pumpkins. They're special pumpkins. Kent, yeah, like the green skinned one. Butternut works. I think most Australians or non-Americans think that we use jack-o'-lantern pumpkins. We don't eat those. Those are terrible. You would never actually eat those. They're for pigs. McVitie's could work for pie crust as well. Yeah. So the Libby's pumpkins are, they're specially bred for pumpkin pie pumpkins, as we call them back in America. I think smaller and sweeter. Like they're special. And yeah, you can make it yourself, but you got to get the water out. Like, it tends to be quite watery. What makes Korean fried chicken Korean? Super crunchy. There's a place at Central Park in Sydney, which Rod and I went to many times, called Gomi Chicken and Beer, which is Korean fried chicken. It's like popcorn chicken, but you get it and you get beer and you sit there and eat it, and it's really good. Yeah, Gomi Chicken and Beer at Central Park if you're there. It's out the back. Lucy, where there's sort of that like grassy area? That's where it is. I think Korean fried chicken is like double battered, I think, technically. So it's like also quite crunchy. Like it should be quite crunchy. I found the Korean store here. There's a couple Asian supermarkets. It's actually more so than I expected to find in Munich. There's a Korean restaurant near us, actually, that I haven't tried out yet, mainly because of lockdown. But it's a nice Korean restaurant. Found that big Asian supermarket and the little Korean supermarket. Yeah, I made a whole bunch at the Korean grocery store. You can get frozen beef for bulgogi, which is already sliced. And so I buy like a kilo at a time frozen, make up a ton of bulgogi, and then we had it twice this week because David Chang has a recipe for bulgogi burritos, and so using bulgogi rice, gochujang, and sour cream as the sauce, and green onions. I think he wants you to put pickled daikon in it. I didn't have any, but it was beautiful regardless. Because Munich is not the Asian food mecca that Sydney is, to be fair, but very few places in the world are. Maybe I'll do a few rows in the sock once I finish this round. Yeah, the great news is that the what do we call it? The infection rate here is under 100 for the first time since before Christmas. And the new rules are that if you're under 100 for a certain number of days in a row, things can start opening up. So I believe as of this Wednesday, we've got outdoor dining. So the beer gardens, walking by and seeing the beer gardens putting out the benches was so exciting. So outdoor dining should be coming back. The museums and stuff are opening. I think you have to book times. Like, there's still, numbers are controlled. I went to the hair salon 2 weeks ago, and it was the week before things opened up, and I actually had to get a rapid test to go into the hair salon. But with the numbers being low, that won't be required anymore. Like, you still have to wear a mask and stuff, and they limit the numbers, but it's great news. The vaccination, they finally ramped it up here. I mean, I think we've finally been hitting like 1 million vaccinations a day. And Germany has, like, the population of Germany, I'm surprised. I think it was like over 300, I think. No, sorry. US is over 300. Germany's about 84, 85 million. So we've hit doing 1 million a day. And Rod's been keeping an eye on the various subreddits and the threads at work. The GPs can do it now. Your GP can do it. Supplies are still not somewhat limited, and so we're not yet in the group where you can just go. But we could probably, if we hustled, find a place that had some and do it. But I'm kind of like, I'd rather make sure that everybody who needs it gets it. They're saying that all adults, the goal is for all adults to be offered by end of June. So I have more and more Australian friends who are telling me they're either getting it or have access to it. So it seems like at least Australia is making some headway. But I think the vaccination rates are behind the numbers falling. Yeah, older people in medical frontline. Yeah, we're waiting for news when Rod's parents can get theirs. But they live out in the country. The risk is pretty low out there. Yeah, some of my friends with pre-existing conditions, I think, were probably why that's probably why they were able to get them. Okay, there's another round done. Yeah, we registered as well, so we are in a queue. It's just they haven't gotten to us yet. All right, that round is done. All right, I'm gonna look at this sock. So I haven't made. How long have I spent on that sweater so far? To be honest with you, this is growing slower than I expected, given how thick the wool. If I were just knitting plain stocking stitch, this thing, I probably would have been done by now. But the cables slow you down. And so I've probably been going, look, I really only work on it on the stream. So if you add up how long it's been on the stream, these rounds, now that I've switched needles, the rounds are going much faster. The plastic needles took a lot longer. I mean, I don't know, maybe six hours? I'm trying to think of how many streams I've done it, how much of the stream I would have been doing it. 6 to 8. It's a bit slow. Slow going, and I'm a fast knitter. Cables take a long time. This is actually grown a lot faster. So knitting a sock. This is the Slytherin sock. Let me just untangle this. This wool gets so tangled up. Okay. This is a self-striping wool. I think we decided it's Zauberball. I lost the label and I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure I bought it at the Convent and Chapel Wool store in Rylstone in rural New South Wales, which is an excellent little yarn store. I recommend them if you're driving, you know, on the way out to Mudgee. Great stop on the way back. So this is, I'll switch my project there. Broken rib toe up socks. If you're thinking it looks fairly big for a sock, it is. Again, this is for Rod. He hasn't had a pair of socks in a while. He doesn't like wearing hand-knitted socks under shoes. He tends to wear them as like house socks. And so doesn't mind them being, actually prefers them being a little bit looser. I'm actually going to try it on my foot. See how long I need to go for the heel. I can do a couple more stripes. So I'm doing magic loop technique. I'm just using one circular. And the stitch pattern is only on the top of the foot. Obviously the bottom of the foot is plain. Just I'll look up Zauberball, see if that's what this is on Ravelry. Zauberball. Yarns. Yeah, it is a Zauberball. I thought as much. Zauber, of course, means magic auf Deutsch. Wow, there's a lot of colorways of Zauberball. Just having a look at which one that is. Just look it up. Zauberball, green, gray, black. I can't find the colorway, but it's definitely his Albert ball. Magic ball. That was, you know, I watched the Harry Potter movies all in German with the subtitles on in German so I could learn more words. And I mean, not that those are particularly useful words, but your magic wand is your Zauberstäbchen, your magic stabber. Basically, this pattern is you do a 2x2 rib, but you only do it every other round, and you alternate which are the knits and the purls. I was, if you saw the stream, I originally was doing an undulating rib pattern, leg down. That's what I cast on for with this wool, and I didn't like it. It was sort of fighting against the stripes, and this wool, because it's got such contrasty stripes, kind of figured I'd be a fool to fight against it. Better pick just a plainer pattern. It's one area where I tend to have always made quite poor choices is choosing. You know, because I like to knit cables, I like to knit very interesting patterns, but if you don't choose a plain yarn, you don't see them so well. And I also like crazy colored yarn, so. Like that stag jumper that's in the little gallery, like knitting it out of cream. It actually shows the cables beautifully, but ugh. Knitting a boring cream jumper. A little closer for this. Sadly, the sock is one that I have to work on during the day because I cannot see the black yarn at night. I need reading glasses. And so then on the every other row, you just knit across the broken rib. So this across the top of the foot now, I will just knit. switch to gray. The paper pattern is all cut out. Oh, that's the annoying part. I mean, printed home patterns are the best, but also spending 2 hours of cutting and taping and cutting again is a real pain. I have the most ridiculous fabric. I should show you this, Lucy. I bought this ridiculous fabric. Let me grab it. I have no idea what possessed me to buy this. It was when Calico and Ivy were going out of business. It's ridiculous. It is light pink. It's got dogs and houses and grapes and birds and look at this. Look at this. It's yeah, exactly. Laugh. And I bought like 4.5 meters of it because my intention is to make the most ridiculous 50s style house dress, like a full-on shirt dress out of it. 'Cause it's kind of, I guess, is it like a crepe? I don't even know. I remember Donna sold it to me and she laughed at me as she cut it. She was like, I can't believe you're buying this. But they were going out of business. It was like half off. And that was like 7 or 8 years ago. So I've been carrying it around. Yes, exactly. It's a very like Mad Men style, ridiculous. Yeah, I've actually got a pattern printed and cut for it. I just haven't actually been brave enough to sew it, which is, it's actually from one of the big four, but I saw it on a whole lot of Curvy Sewing Collective posts as being a great shirt dress for, you know, a curvy fit. And the problem with buying, it was a PDF pattern I bought from like, I don't know, McCall's or something like that. They had DRM on it. So you could print the PDF, but you had to use a special PDF reader of theirs. It was the only one that would open the file. And then you could only print the entire thing. So even though it had different sizes and different options, you couldn't even select the pages. And it didn't give you an overview so that you knew which pages to print anyway. So I was like, screw this. And a little bit of hacking and cracking later, I had managed to generate my own overview of the pattern pieces, work out which pages I needed to print, and crack the DRM so that I could print just those pages. But I know, it's ridiculous. When am I ever going to wear that? Never, but I love it. Very full skirt, of course. 50s cosplay in a ridiculous, and plus it's a directional print. So it's like, you know, that's why I need it so much, because it only goes one direction. You can't have the dog upside down. So maybe I brought it. I dragged it to Germany, so maybe at some point I will sew that, and of course I will share the process. The Betty dress by Sew Over It. Let me see that. Sew Over It Betty dress. Yes, so I actually did sew a dress like that. Yes, so I've got a dress like that I sewed. I did the course through what's the one out on in where I did the Gertie class a few years back. In Petersham. It's is it Bobbin and Ink? Is that what they're called? No, that's the one in Newtown. This is where I have to look at my own blog to remember like vintage dress. Get the sewing tag on my own blog to find what this dress was. I made a lady skater dress. I would not recommend that. Negroni, dress. Did I not share it? I mean, I didn't have a pattern for it. It was a course that I did through this. It's Bobbin and Ink. Yeah, Bobbin and Ink. I did the course through Bobbin and Ink. Yeah, it's them. Not Sew Make Create, Bobbin and Ink. It was a vintage retro sewing class that they offered over the course of, I think it was over like 2 weekends maybe. And so I did a dress with that, and I used this really sweet fabric I got at actually Spotlight with cherries on it. It used to be my go-to dress for the Melbourne Cup because I would wear it with. I actually bought a crinoline 2 years ago. Just because why not? You know, you need it to like. There it is. It's on Instagram. So this is the dress. Hey, Tessalina Sophia, wie geht es mit Ihnen? That's the picture of the dress, Lucy. So that was made through Bobbin and Ink's like vintage dress pattern, but it's very similar to that sew over it dress. Like it's a sleeveless sort of shell with a circle skirt. And it has a lapped zipper. Actually, that one has a zipper. Is it under the arm? I feel like it might be. Yeah, I feel like it might be under the arm. Great little pattern. Yeah. They're very flattering, that sort of style. Sorry, Tessalina, we went down a bit of a sewing rabbit hole. Talking about sewing dresses with ridiculous fabric. I've got some other fabric as well to do a 50s style dress. I bought, Gertie had her line at Spotlight a few years back, which was really nice because it had a lot of border prints in it. And so I bought... So I bought quite a lot of this. Again, it has a Gretchen Hirsch. So this is a sort of pink and black polka dot, but it's got these sort of big white roses border print at the edge, at both sort of selvages. So yeah, and I again bought like I think like 4.5 meters or something ridiculous like that. So I'll do a dress out of that too, and obviously get the use the border print along the bottom. Eating Käse and Schinken sandwich and trying to get fried. I was just saying to Selena Sophia that last night I actually ordered and ate the Big Spargel Hollandaise from McDonald's. Which was okay in as much as it was a novelty burger from McDonald's. Mein Deutschkurs beginnt Freitag. I'm getting my German course on Friday, this coming week. So ich freue mich. I'm very excited and happy about that. You have not yet bought fresh spargel? What are you doing? We've had spargel every week. I made like a well, obviously we had it like the traditional style. I made a hash with spargel. I made last weekend a panzanella, like an Italian bread salad with garlic croutons and spargel. I found a recipe I was looking at, might do this week, which is like a tart, like a quiche, but mit spargel. Sort of challenged Rod that every we need to, use spargel in a different way every week. Spargel cream zuppa. It's any asparagus. I mean, the one that everyone really goes nuts for is the white one. Do you want to explain to us, Tessalina Sophia, why? Like, it's good, but it's in season, so I guess that's part of it. Like, it's seasonal eating, and it's a tradition. It's also rhubarb season. So I made a rhubarb and strawberry crisp last week, which was quite good too. Rhabarberzeit und Spargelzeit. I just like the idea that it's, everybody's going nuts over it, will participate. I think it's like us and the pumpkin pie, Lucy. Like sometimes, it's just a thing you have at a time of year. 3 Stunden Deutschkurs pro Woche. 3 hours of German class every week. 8:30 in the morning. Look, I know that's not early for anyone who's not me, but that's early for me. Oh, you're into it. You had some asparagus today. Yes, but it's autumn there. It's the wrong time, Lucy. Muss im Frühlings haben. In spring is when you have to have it. The white ones are to be honest with you, I think if I closed my eyes and you asked me to determine, I don't know that I'd be able to do it. The white is, I would say, maybe a little more subtle. It seems quite bitter. The white is grown underground and expensive because it can only be handled by hand. It's quite thick too, the white. I don't know why, it just seems so much thicker than the green. And the way it's cooked here, we looked it up because, at home I would just sort of steam it. But here you sort of, you put it into boiling water that has like sugar and salt in it. You actually, you make sure that the boiling water is sweet. So we've tried it that way a few times. It was much better with Rod's homemade hollandaise than with the than with the carton from the grocery store. But again, the carton, I don't know, the way they sell it, it seems like the carton is part of the tradition. Und heute haben wir Entenbrust für Abendessen. We're having duck breast for dinner. Got a frozen one at the supermarket. Maybe do the duck breast tomorrow. I've also got Maultaschen, which is a nice quick dinner. Someone put us onto the trick with the Maultaschen. Maultaschen, I mean, it's kind of like a German ravioli. It's like little, dumpling pockets. You slice them up and then almost like fry them and then scramble an egg into it. It's really good. My blog post about going to the German supermarket, I think, was the biggest one that I had this year. Everyone was fascinated by the differences at the supermarket. You miss soup dumplings, yeah. So I should talk about what I'm knitting. So one of the keys to doing magic loop when you're doing it is to make sure you pull the first stitch on each side a little tighter so you don't get a ladder, where the two needles join there. I mean, I don't have a gap, the knitting is continuous. You can see a bit of a line, but that's mainly where it switches from the knits to purls. But if you're not careful, you can actually end up with a bit of a ladder there, like you get in pantyhose, where it's too loose. And so what I always do is give that first stitch an extra tug. And also the first stitch I need to make here is a purl. So I'm going to make sure, remember, that my wool is in the front for knitting a purl. If I put it behind the tip of the needle, when I make my purl, I'm actually going to create an extra loop on the needle, and that is a yarn over, and that is bad. So wool to the front. And then what I do is I make the first stitch, then I put my tip in the second stitch, and then I tighten it up. And again, a little extra tug, just to tighten up that first one. Yeah, a bit tighter on the side. I mean, I think once you wash the socks a few times, even if you do have a ladder, once you've washed them a few times and worn them, blocked them even, the tension will even out, I think, to some extent, but yeah, as you say, I would rather have it be a little tighter on the sides than have ladders. Oops. Didn't I look through? I think I'm gonna finish up here soon, folks. It's about lunchtime. Again, I'm knitting. So my wool is in the back. Again, make one stitch, then tighten it up. I'm just thinking because I'm going to make, obviously, a pair of socks. So what I'll do on the second one, I think before I start the heel increases, I'll stop and take a picture of it with my phone so that I know where on the stripes, so that I can make the second one to match. Know how many stripes I'd go before I start the heel. I haven't been counting rows. Who's got time to count rows? We're getting to the black. I'll do the black stripe because, as I said, I can't do that at night. So might as well do it now while I get daylight. Let's see a bit better. Well, that talk of sewing is making me want to sew now, but I really want to finish the vest so he can actually wear it before proper summer. Probably too late at this point. I do. I did bring my sewing machine. I mean, it's yeah, the good news is the power is the same. The plugs are different. But we brought, some Australian power boards basically. So yeah, that works. That's fine. I've done a few bits and pieces. Yeah, to go to the US, you need a transformer. That was always the bit. Like in Australia, I wanted a KitchenAid for years, and they were stupidly expensive in Australia compared to the US. And I was like, can't I just get a converter? And Rod's like, no, because the voltage is different. Especially something like with a motor, you can run the risk of burning it out. But here the voltage is the same. So all our, that's why we've brought some of our cooking appliances. We brought like the sous vide machine and the Instant Pot, and I brought my sewing machine and my hair dryer. But and obviously our computers and stuff can be plugged in. So it's just the plug adapters we've really had to buy here. You remember I had to buy a transformer in Australia because I bought someone sent me some Halloween, well, they're Christmas lights, fairy lights, but for Halloween. And yeah, the lights, like if I needed to use the transformer to actually get those to work. But I got, turn my camera, you can see it. I've got my IKEA, there she is. I got an IKEA standing desk I bought as a cutting table because I realized one of the things I liked about Bobbin and Ink is the cutting table was so high. I'm tall, and so go back. There we go. So yeah, a standing desk means I can raise it up when I cut, and so I don't have to bend over and kill my back. But yeah, all our appliances, we have 20 years of Australian appliances. Didn't have any, other than those Christmas lights, didn't have any American things. And the stuff I've gotten here that's European, I'll be able to take back to Australia someday as well. Rod bought his coffee machine here. He bought a really fancy coffee machine, which, yeah, he wouldn't have done if it wouldn't work back in Australia. I brought, Lucy, some reason I brought like 8 giant cones of overlocking thread despite not bringing the overlocker. Don't know why I found those important enough to crate halfway around the world, but it did. That was very clever of me. I guess I could always get an overlocker here. I unpacked him. I was like, what the hell was I thinking? Shipped a box of recycling. Yeah, my friend John and his wife just moved from Sydney to Singapore, and apparently the movers bagged up their rubbish and shipped it as well. They only found out when they were unpacking. Ew. Yeah. Yeah, my overlocker, I ran it for a long time off just the thread it came with. It was only, I eventually bought some. Mine came with white, and then of course I bought some black, and then eventually the little cones ran out. So I've got a set of white and a set of black, and for some reason I brought them with me. Katja. Grüß Gott. Servus, as we say in Bavaria. I attended a tech meetup earlier this week, a virtual one, which was from Nuremberg, and the speaker was Frankish. He's from that region, and someone said to me, just Kris, by the way, Frankish people, they do not, you know, they're not Bavarians the way Münchners are Bavarian. Oh, okay, all right. You know, there are lots of like very little tribal groups around here. So guten Tag, yeah, I learned, and they were like, oh, his accent. I'm like, I actually can't tell. To me, it was like when I moved to Australia and I couldn't tell the difference between Australians, Kiwis, and South Africans. Now I can easily, but at the time, so no, I cannot tell the difference between, if they're speaking Hochdeutsch, the difference between a Bayerisch, a Frankisch, a Schwäbisch. They all sound the same to me. Austrian, Swiss. Hallo aus Heidelberg. Oh, I can't wait to go to Heidelberg. Schloss Heidelberg is my favorite castle in all of Germany, and I've not been there in 25 years, so I would really love to go back and see it. As soon as I get immunized, baby. I need to get my license here too. I realized I need to convert my Australian driver's license to a German so I can drive. Fahren auf der Autobahn. You can tell Swiss. Well, yes, when there's another dialect. I mean, the Bayerisch, honestly, Bayerisch, I have no idea what's going on there. One of my neighbors, I can't understand a word she says. But I'm doing a project at work with our Swiss team, and so I'm spending a lot more time on video calls with them, and then hopefully as soon as travel opens up, I will be getting to go to Switzerland fairly regularly, which I'm excited about. But you're right, they don't like being lumped in with Germany. They want their own very distinct identity, which I guess, yeah, was on some site the other day where I had a language selector, and it actually did have Swiss German as a different language. It's not bad in Munich. I've not, I have one neighbor who speaks Bayerisch, and I cannot understand her. But other people are fine. What's that sound? Plane. Someone put me onto a rock band called Die Hundskribbeln, which is, it's actually a fairly cool band. They're on YouTube, and I was watching some of those videos, and their new single's called Bayerische Wald, the Bavarian forest. But it's quite a lot of it is in sort of Bayerisch, and I don't understand it. Like, the words are different. And Google Translate does not handle Bayerisch. Austrian is very well. This week I learned the very important concept of Brückentag. Gestern war Brückentag. Yesterday was Brückentag, which is Bridge Day, because Thursday was the public holiday. The public holiday on Thursday, and then when you have a day that is between the public holiday and the weekend, it's called Brückentag. Which if you take it off, it means you get a full long 3-day weekend. What is that camera? Wow, it really distorts when you get away from the center of the lens. Brückentag, and I tweeted about it, and then all these other people, Europeans, were commenting that they have the Dutch equivalent is called like a squeeze day, something. In Dutch, it's squeeze day. The Italians have a Brückentag, the French, but it's a funny one because I don't think there's an English term for it. You know, we talk about a 3-day weekend or a 4-day weekend or a long weekend, but we do not have a specific term for the day between the public holiday and the weekend. It's just, you know, the day you chuck a sickie. But Brückentag, Bridge Day, I like that. I tweeted it with a meme one of the German guys sent me, which is of Captain Kirk on the bridge of, oh, hey, thanks for the follow. The meme was Captain Kirk hat immer Brückentag. Captain Kirk always has Bridge Day. Yeah, I relocated with work. So I applied for a job at my company over here, and then both of us did, and then we relocated. All right, I'm onto the green. What do you do, Tesalina? What kind of job are you looking for? See, this is where I cannot see. That was, okay, I'm on a knit row. Can't tell the difference between the knits and purls on the black. The yarn is Zauberball, which is a German yarn. It's a self-striping Zauberball. I don't know what the colorway is. I was looking on Ravelry earlier, but I couldn't find it because they have a million of them. I bought it in Australia, and the label fell off, so I don't know the number, but Zauberball, Magic Ball, by Schoppel Yarn, I think is Zauberball. I'm calling it the Slytherin socks. Because I was watching Harry Potter when I cast on, and they feel very Slytherin-ish. And my husband. He's definitely a Slytherin. Admin, you need C-level German, yeah. I don't know what level I'm at. My course that I'm doing, it's Berlitz. What is the course? What level? I can't tell at the moment. It's on my phone. Yeah, I'm only like a third of the way on the Berlitz scale, whatever that is. I had to do a phone call with them for them to assess what level I was at. And they're like, well, your vocabulary's good, but your grammar's kind of all over the place. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. My Ravelry is, do I have it here? Let me just find it. I think it's Web Goddess, but what's my actual, there I am. Yeah, it's just Web Goddess, all one word. That's me. Well, if you find anything on Amazon.jobs and you want me to refer you or give you more information, have a look. I mean, we have offices, and I don't know what's going. I've been trying to hire 2 people for my team, but very specialized roles. I'm trying to find someone who speaks Russian, but who is a developer evangelist, so who's hands-on technical but loves giving conference talks and speaking in front of audiences and writing blog posts. One in Russian and one in Arabic, and very difficult. I made a video on Ravelry, or not on Ravelry, on LinkedIn. Like 7,000 people watched it, and I got 3 candidates out of it. So yeah, hiring is a pain. Yeah, I'm not on Ravelry as much as I used to be. You know, I used to be on it quite a lot. Nowadays, I use it to document projects, if I even remember. Which ones were the pearls? Was the first 2? Yeah. Just do this last bit. Yeah. Yeah, the Insta's in the chat as well. My blog is web-goddess.org. Twitter is with an underscore, my blog is with a dash, and Ravelry is without any. That's why I get confused. And if you pick the wrong version on any platform, it's all porn. All right, I'm gonna finish up here because it is still not raining in Munich, and that means I should probably get outside because it is forecast to start this afternoon, and I'd really like to get outside at some point. So I'll be back. I'll probably be back knitting tomorrow as well. So if you follow me, you'll get a notification, but I'll probably do some more tomorrow. It's been great. Oh, Lucy, it was so nice of you to join. Really, really good to hear from you. And meine neue deutsche Freundin. Yeah, my new German friend. Thank you for joining in as well. I will see you all hopefully tomorrow. And schönes Wochenende. Have a lovely weekend. Ciao.